This is my video about Yu-Gi-Oh's ban list problem. So Yu-Gi-Oh, unlike most major card games, has an absolutely massive ban list. I'm talking gargantuan. There are so many cards that are on the ban list, and these are only on the forbidden list, cards you're literally not allowed to play with at all in the card game. This isn't mentioning the two different lists of limited and semi-limited cards, which are only allowed to play a limited number of. This combined with the fact that Yu-Gi-Oh has two different ban lists, there's one for the TCG and also one for the OCG, and there's even a separate ban list for the cards in Master Duel, makes it extremely confusing. Because the ban list also houses the most powerful cards like Maxi or Appaloosa, it's totally up in the air when you go into one of the different versions of the card game, whether or not the card will be banned or legal or limited to some extent. Originally, this was because they were on different release schedules. Cards coming out in America came at a different time than the ones in Japan, meaning that the ban lists had to be different, similarly to Master Duel, where there's a different number of cards that aren't released in the game quite yet. This only causes additional headaches because not only do they have different release schedules in terms of what cards are not only legal to be played, but actually in the game at a certain point, but it also causes different difficulties because of the different philosophies between the ban lists. When a super powerful deck like Snake Eye comes out, maybe you need to ban versions of Snake Eye Ash or lower the number, but maybe you just need to completely ban extenders like Snake Eye Oak. Maybe it's the extension that you need to ban, cards like Lacrima that need to be banned after all the power in the TCG, and yet this card is still not banned in Master Duel. For what reason, it's hard to tell. In general, card games use their ban lists as somewhat problem solvers, taking older cards that may be broken, a card like Time Walk for Magic or Pot of Greed in Yu-Gi-Oh, and making them banned. Obviously, banning cards that are way too powerful for your game is the purpose of your ban list. But because Yu-Gi-Oh doesn't have any set rotation, super powerful decks like Snake Eyes or Kashtira really have no recourse in terms of stopping them other than banning the cards in the deck and putting them on the ban list. Because Yu-Gi-Oh doesn't have many meaningful ways to mitigate the power level of the cards they've already released into the game, the ban list gets used an absolute ton in Yu-Gi-Oh compared to any other card game on the market. And this is the main problem I want to talk about in this video. There's no formats in Yu-Gi-Oh, so a card that is maybe less powerful but very strong in a limited environment or a standard environment won't be printed or see any play. And because Yu-Gi-Oh also has no set rotation of their main format, super duper powerful decks that may dominate the metagame for a couple years will never ever go away unless they are dealt with in some fashion. This leads to the Yu-Gi designers, when they're faced with a deck that is way too powerful, really having only one of two options. They can either ban the deck and then make it so that way all the cards that you bought for that deck massively drop in price as you are literally no longer allowed to play them, or you can not ban the deck and simply hope that players will find a way around playing the most powerful deck, or maybe a new card will be released that brings the power level of that deck down. It's worth mentioning there are a couple other ways that Yu-Gi-Oh can mess with the cards. They can errata a card like Dark Magician of Chaos here, so that way it has a different line of text that isn't actually present on the card that you just kind of have to know. It's a really messy solution, but it does work for some cards where you need to add it once per turn, for example. I've also already mentioned the limited / semi-limited list where you're allowed to play either one or two copies of a card. This isn't super useful, but can help lower the power level of a card like Zodiac Raptor here, which allows you to get another version of itself into play from the deck. If you can only have two copies of this card, you can't chain it to all three, getting an extra material. So it does have some meaningful impact on Yu-Gi-Oh, but doesn't really lower the power level of super duper powerful metagame cards like Maxi. I think it's pretty clear to see how this changes the game of Yu-Gi-Oh at a fundamental level because of the way they use the ban list on different decks in the game. Outside of the obvious bans where a deck is so far above the power level of everything else that it absolutely will have different aspects of it banned or limited in some extent to make the deck much weaker, all the cards in Yu-Gi-Oh, especially the ones you buy, are much less safe than in any other card game on the market. Whether or not a card like Kashtira Fenrir will end up getting banned or simply limited to one will not only massively change the price of the card being allowed to play with it in the game at all or not, but it will also change your ability to play perhaps your entire deck of Kashtiras if they ban the card or if the card gets only limited to a small amount. Not only can the fact that a deck is too powerful mean that it gets ripped out from underneath you and no longer be allowed to play, there are also changes that they make to the game as a whole that can also make it so that way cards can't be played anymore. Grinder Golem is my favorite example of this, a card that really saw no play and didn't really do anything, but if it was your favorite card, sorry, you can't play with it anymore because we just introduced links which completely break the card, meaning that cards that make basically any tokens on your side of the board are completely banned. This also leads to Yu-Gi-Oh having staples that have been banned in the game for the most time it's been allowed to be played coming off the list. A card like Harpy's Feather Duster may seem completely absurd to allow to be legal in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh, but you are literally allowed to play with Harpy's Feather Duster right now because of how powerful the game has gotten. The power creep of Yu-Gi-Oh is not only the most prevalent because of the fact that the game is naturally the fastest of all the major card games, but it's also even harder to stop because they have basically no tools in the toolkit to stop power creep from happening in Yu-Gi-Oh. This leads to Yu-Gi-Oh having a massive deluge of completely unplayable cards, more so than any other card game on the market. Standard metagame staples from the olden days, like Spirit Reaper or Reborn Tengu or Orcust Harpor, which may have been the top dog in their era, are still legal to play in the format, but are basically complete jokes because of the state of the power creep in the game. People in Yu-Gi-Oh argue that the fact that there are tons of unplayable cards that don't see any play is valuable because of the fact that there are cards that will end up seeing play from those olden days that are still powerful. But in general, the cards that end up lasting the test of time and can still see play in modern Yu-Gi-Oh, even though they were printed a decade ago plus, are cards that are like Solemn Judgment, which literally apply to every single card in the entire game. Meaning that if you have a card like Solemn Judgment, you can literally stop any card from any point in Yu-Gi-Oh's entire history. So other than having a massive change of the way Yu-Gi-Oh is played at a fundamental level, these cards will always be playable. Outside of universal staples that you can put into any deck, almost every deck needs some sort of legacy support to become playable again, some piece put into the deck that makes it function at a modern Yu-Gi-Oh level. This also helps with the perception of Yu-Gi-Oh being the most volatile card game of all time. Sets will have massive swings from being rampant power creep on set release, a new set coming out that you absolutely have to buy and completely redefines the way that Yu-Gi-Oh is played at a fundamental level, or a set will come out that has basically small to no meta impact, maybe adding a couple cards to a couple fringe niche playable decks, but not really doing anything to upset the top dogs released by previous power sets. And for those less playable, more niche decks, outside of getting a good piece of legacy support that helps pick up your archetype, maybe something completely broken that redefines the way you play the archetype altogether, there's not really anything you can do to make your deck more playable. Having these massive swings means that if you buy into a deck and want to play it for a long time, you are at a huge risk of that deck not only being removed from the game due to the fact of power creep and a new mechanic coming out that completely overwrites your deck altogether, but you also have to walk the fine line of not getting your deck banned, as if your legacy support is simply too powerful and gets banned out from underneath you, you're back to the same problem of before of your deck being made in 2015 in 2025. And while the ban list in Yu-Gi-Oh causes all these problems, it's important, I think, to look at the other games' ban list to see the way they do it and why it's so much nicer to the other card games that are the big ones compared to Yu-Gi-Oh. Magic's most recent yearly ban list, for example, only banned 7 cards in Standard and didn't ban any cards in any of the other major played formats of Magic. Not only this, but Magic also explains the bans on the ban list down below in an article, meaning that you can understand the philosophy behind why they are banning things. This gives purpose to the ban list, meaning that you won't just have cards banned out from underneath you and wonder if the only reason they got banned is so that way you are forced to buy a new deck. Because of the set rotation and the multitude of formats that you're allowed to play in Magic, even if you looked at all of the bans in Standard right now and hated all of them for whatever reason, you still have many other formats that you can play that have remained completely unchanged, meaning that you probably haven't lost anything for many of the players in the game. If we look at the Pokemon side of things, we can see that Pokemon TCG basically never bans cards in the standard format. It's a massive rarity and almost never happens. By printing cards in a much safer way that is much closer to the line, it is much less likely that you're not only going to damage your player's trust by banning their decks out from underneath them, but also you're not going to damage their game overall by printing a card that is way too powerful and that people feel wary on buying, whether or not it's going to get banned or not, and they're going to lose a ton of money from buying a playset of a super powerful card. This helps keep your metagame much more stable and take a lot less damage from the bans when they do happen. If there's a card that's a massive outlier, like Oko Thief of Crowns, for example, that you have to ban it, everyone can kind of understand that obviously a super powerful card like that is going to be banned. However, if you don't ban the cards in that sort of middle ground that are simply very powerful but may not be ban worthy, it is much easier for your players to not only buy into your game but continue to play your game without the fear of their decks becoming unplayable. And this is the main problem with Yu-Gi-Oh's ban list, that the ban list is not for game balancing, keeping the game overall healthier and keeping powerful cards out of the metagame. It is for game design at a core. Because Yu-Gi-Oh has literally no options to rotate out cards that may mess with a new design that they're implementing or may mess with a new metagame deck they want to put into the card game, they have literally no other options, and the ban hammer remains the only choice for the game designers. This makes it so that way the game designers at Yu-Gi-Oh headquarters are massively punished for making large mistakes. Oh, we've decided that we no longer want to have generic negates in our card game. I guess you have to ban literally every single one of them printed into the game over the past few years. Oops, we decided that our game's about special summoning now. I guess we have to ban literally all of the cards in the game that say you can't special summon monsters because they completely break the entire game when they're played. Oh, you want to implement a new mechanic where you can use any monster to summon out a cool extra dex monster? I guess you better ban anything that revives itself from the graveyard for free, otherwise that would literally be a played card in every single deck coming out for free and being used for link summoning. It's absurd, but a card like a Pointer of the Red Lotus, a complete joke for most of Yu-Gi-Oh's lifespan, is on the ban list right now because of the power of simply looking at your opponent's hand and removing one card for a single turn. You also have to pay 1/4 of your life points for the privilege. The amount of compounding issues that have been present in Yu-Gi-Oh over the years, from the fact that their only solution to every single problem is just to ban the card, really shows not only with the length of the number of cards on the ban list, but with the way that Yu-Gi-Oh actually deals with their cards that are either too powerful or cards that may have been designed in a way that isn't good for the modern year. So now I would like to know, what would you do if you were the Yu-Gi-Oh designers? What would you do to help mitigate this ban problem? Would you have more erratas, just heavily errata more cards, and then reprint them more often so you can get more errated versions of the card out there? Would you limit more cards, maybe put more cards on the limited and semi-limited list so it doesn't feel quite so bad when you get a card completely banned out from underneath you? Maybe there's some other solution that I'm not thinking of, because it's clear that this is a massive problem in Yu-Gi-Oh in my mind, and I have absolutely no idea what I would do as a designer to try to dig myself out of the hole that Konami has put themselves in. Let me know in the comments down below if you guys have any ideas for how to help solve the banning issue present in Yu-Gi-Oh right now. Like and subscribe for more videos just like this one. Thank you for watching.